Technology is so amazing, and I am so blessed and honored to be able to have a conversation with Nicole Phillips, who lived in my community for several years. And I certainly knew who you were, Nicole, but I never actually met you. And
It's that funny how we can be in alternating circles and kind of know of each other without actually knowing each other. We do
and
that a lot in our world, I think.
it's not that big a town when you think about it. You know,
Yeah.
it's odd, but Nicole is a champion for you. I'm going to read your bio here because you do better telling about you than I do, since I only know of you. So I'm going to read this quick so people can know who you are. Nicole is a champion for using kindness to overcome all of life's difficulties, including her own battle with breast cancer. She spreads the message of the healing power of kindness as host of her weekly show, The Kindness Podcast, and through her column, Kindness is Contagious, which runs each Friday in newspapers. Remember those? In North Dakota and Minnesota. She is also the author of the books Kindness is Contagious and Kindness is Courageous. So, Nicole, I am so happy to be seeing you. We're actually doing a Zoom where we can see each other, and then we'll use it later for podcast. Thank you for agreeing to be with me today.
I love this. This was a sweet, sweet break from running my boys to baseball games. And believe it or not, in the middle of COVID, we are still playing baseball. So,
Glad to hear that they are playing. So, Nicole, just for those of you who might not know, Nicole's husband was the basketball coach at NDSU. Boys basketball. Look at that, the boys basketball coach. I say the men's basketball coach. And so they lived in Fargo for quite a while. But Nicole, I don't even know where you grew up. Wisconsin?
yes, Saul and I both grew up in a little town called Reedsburg, Wisconsin, which is about 10 minutes away from Wisconsin Dells.
Oh, really? Wow. So you've known him forever.
Oh, forever. Yeah, I fell in love with him when I was in sixth grade.
Oh, how sweet is that?
Mhm.
So I met Nicole and Saul when he was coaching basketball at NDSU. I am the scorekeeper for the basketball teams. And so I knew Saul, kind of, as you know, the coach of the team that you get to know. And Nicole was very active in our community in Fargo as a TV reporter, newspaper journalist. You were everywhere. You knew a lot of people I knew. Well, really. And then, as basketball coaches do, your husband, got a call to go to Ohio, of all places,
Right?
to become the basketball coach there. And I have so much I want to know. How is it when you don't get a chance to put down the roots you might want to because you're sort of mobile? What is that like?
It is kind of interesting because we're just feeling that right now. When we were in Fargo, we moved to Fargo when my daughter was 4 months old, and we moved out of Fargo when she was, I don't know, 10 years. We lived in Fargo for 10 years, basically. So, 10 years old she was. There's my math. Very good. I knew my math would kick in here. I haven't had to use it for a really long time this summer. So
I didn't warn you that there'd be any math today, so sorry.
I know. Well, when you start at 0 and you add 10, what do you get? 10. Okay. So my son Charlie was born and my son Ben was born in Fargo. So I felt like those were our roots. We had spent a long time there. And then we moved in 2014 to southeastern Ohio, Athens, Ohio, and spent 5 years there. And I really felt like we put down some nice roots there as well. And then my husband lost his job there. And so at that point, it doesn't matter if you leave. And so we moved to Aberdeen, South Dakota. My husband got a job here, and we have been here for a year, and we're trying to put in roots. Our goal when we move somewhere is always to stay, right? That's what you want to do, is to be able to stay unless an opportunity presents itself in which you just can't say no. But we have now, my daughter is going to be a junior in high school. My son
Wow.
is going to be, I know, my son's going to be a freshman in high school. And then the littlest one, Ben, is going to be a fifth grader. And so really, our intention is to allow the kids to grow up in the schools here, and be able to maintain those friendships, because it's so hard to move in
Well,
those teen
I'm
years.
sure you probably have friends who are what they call army brats or military brats, where they've had to move, like, I don't know, their whole lives. And it does affect you as an adult when you didn't ever get a chance to really get to know people. And I suppose there's an opportunity in that where you become resilient. And, I'm sure if you look at it, and as you do with your mindset that you have about being kind, you can look for the good in things, I suppose, and you've had to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I notice in a lot of my friends who have had a lot of moving in their lives as children, I always look to them as support, because I see them being so good at making friends, being so, like you said, resilient. I think that's really all. So many great qualities come from some of those trickier spots in life.
Well, for sure. And we wouldn't maybe choose them, but
It's,
since we get them, we get to make the best. Well, I don't suppose anybody actually ever chooses breast cancer. So you know what that's like. I remember that. I remember when that happened for you. And I'm saying happened for you because I suppose there are a couple of ways of looking at anything, right? Things
yeah.
can happen for you or to you. And I'm guessing you've seen it as now happening for you. Is that even fair to say?
Yeah. Are you a survivor?
No, I'm not.
Okay, because you say that as a survivor. Very few people understand that unless they have had breast cancer. That I'm not speaking for everyone who is a breast cancer survivor, but the people I have talked to who are survivors will definitely say this happened for me, that there were so many gifts to be unwrapped in that time of trouble and in that time of trial. And I absolutely saw that. I know my husband loves basketball, but going through cancer, I realized that he was willing to put basketball aside and take care of me. And you know what? Ultimately, it may have cost him his job at Ohio, because that was a summer he should have been out recruiting. It was a summer he should have been out working, and he was with me. And so, I mean, yeah, it's I saw the sacrifice that happened, and that grew a closeness between the two of us. And then with my daughter, she's a junior. I mentioned a junior in high school, but when I went through breast cancer, she was in fifth grade, and she started collecting, making these little. Oh, I have one here. It's a little coffee cup sleeve. The people listening won't be able to see it, but it's a little coffee cup sleeve, and it goes on, your water bottle or your coffee cup, and it's made out of fabric. And she calls them cozies for the cure. And so she actually started a business. She collected donations, and she's collected more than $100,000 for the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation. So, I mean, that's something that is part of her story now that never would have happened if I hadn't had breast cancer.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and it's so hard as not a survivor and as somebody who could never know what that is like, to see the inspiration. There, obviously, we've all been touched some in some way. I mean, I've had a lot of friends that have experienced it, and to see and to experience from the outside, I'm sure Saul could say too, it's got to be so hard for the people who have to watch it from the outside.
Harder. I think it
Really? Really?
side, because Saul so desperately wanted to fix it. He wanted to make it go away, and he couldn't. There was nothing he could do except sit next to me, and I didn't even have to go through chemo or radiation. We are just talking about the mastectomy, the reconstruction, those sorts of surgeries that I went through. So I say the toughest part I didn't even have to go through, and we didn't have to go through as a family, and yet um, it was very hard on him. And Jordan, my daughter, said when people ask her, well, why did you do this? And she said, stand I couldn't handle sitting on the sidelines and not doing anything. And it's just that feeling of helplessness. I think that really is tough on the people who are loving the one going through it.
Right. So that's true for any of us. I mean, we can all experience that at some point, some way, by watching somebody, by being there for someone, by caring for someone, or being the one going through it. I think there are so many lessons in that. If you had to pick one, what was the, isn't that weird to say, what was the best thing about it?
Um, well, I think the very best thing about it was what it did for our marriage. And not all survivors have that opportunity, have that experience. Some men or partners leave. They can't handle it. So yeah, that was definitely the best part of it. But it also drew such closeness for me with other people as well. I mean, there were people from my new community who I had only lived there for a year and who were just coming out in droves to just love on our family. And then Fargo. I mean, I had left Fargo a year before, and there was no ill will toward my husband taking a new job. There was no, I mean, people just sent care packages and calls and texts, and really it was just something else to see.
It's hard not to love your family, even from a distance. I'm serious because the best part of being part of that basketball team was getting in my car after the game and listening to the interview. He's the most hilarious guy in the whole world. I just and you know from watching him and about you and then watching your kids, I mean, you just know who you guys are. He's so transparent. Okay, Saul is so transparent and has been so transparent, at least from my perspective, because watching the way he is, his heart is right there on his sleeve all the time as a coach. And you can kind of infer how you raise your family that way, knowing you have a public life, and the kids didn't choose that, I don't suppose. But man, I know your kids just from watching, it feels like.
Yeah, and they've never seemed to, it's never bothered them to kind of live life publicly. I guess none of us have anything to hide. You know, it's kind of here we are, so take it or leave it. I don't know.
So I want to jump into that a little bit. You got your broadcast journalism degree from the University of Wisconsin. So you probably were doing what you wanted to do when you were a television anchor and reporter. Is that true?
Oh
You
yeah.
also were Miss Wisconsin. So there's something about somebody who ends up being Miss Wisconsin that has some sort of confidence. And I'm curious about where that came from. If you can go back to your upbringing and how you were raised, how you were raised as a child. You can't hear me at all. Ah! Technology is so great when it works and so frustrating when it doesn't. Okay,
Okay,
so
I
I
hear you now.
go back.
Oh, you know what? Jody, can you hear me?
I
Let
can
me
always
just let me run upstairs and make sure that all of my people are off the internet just in case it's coming from my end.
could it be?
I don't know.
I think it's mine. I think mine it hasn't popped across my screen that says your internet is unstable, and it usually does, but
Oh, okay.
so I would think it would be on my end. I wouldn't be on yours because I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay.
Perfectly. Um, I was just saying that there has to be a level of confidence that is either born in you or you get nurtured into that that causes you to be Miss Wisconsin in 1997. So I would like to know where that came from for you.
Okay. That is very interesting that you would see it that way because that is not the way that it actually sort of happened. I did like to sing. I like to perform. I was in the high school musicals and things like that. I really enjoyed being on stage with other people. Um, but when I was in fourth grade, I got an obscene phone call, and it was just as my body was developing, and I had just happened to come home from the city's public pool when I got that phone call, and it shook me to the core. It was as devastating as anything could be, um, as far as the development of the way I saw myself. So after that phone call in fourth grade, I would not go to a swimming pool ever without wearing a shirt over my swimming suit. And that went all the way through high school. And I was in my senior year of high school, and I knew that I needed to earn some money for college. I had to figure out how to get scholarships for college. And there was a notice in our high school that said it's $1,000 prize for whoever wins Miss Appleton. It was in Wisconsin. And I was like, oh, I need that $1,000. Like I need it. And, and I knew, looking into it a little bit, that there was going to be a talent portion. And I thought, well, I sing sometimes. That's not a problem. An interview portion. I was like, yeah, okay. I can figure out how to do an interview, I guess. And then there was a swimsuit section. And that to me, I looked at it and I knew there were two ways to go. And number one was that I could allow that one instance to define me for the rest of my life. Or I could basically put a big, middle finger up and say, you don't own me anymore. And I chose to put up the middle finger and win the $1,000. And so what happened was that after I won Miss Appleton, I went to Miss Wisconsin and I lost. But I realized I realized the power behind that it was the part of the Miss America organization. And I realized that not only do they provide scholarship dollars, but the ability that I would have as Miss Wisconsin to promote a message that was close to my heart it would be a once in a lifetime opportunity. And so I knew that I wanted to talk to kids about crisis in their life. My parents had divorced. We moved when I was in 8th grade. I tried to commit suicide. My mom married a prison inmate when I was a young girl. And so I felt like I have something that I want to share with young people across the state of Wisconsin. And so after losing Miss Wisconsin, I spent, I think, 3 years kind of really preparing that message and really preparing myself and just living life and seeing what I had together and what I didn't. And then I went back to Miss Wisconsin with that message. And then that's when I won. And the beauty behind that is it paid. I had just graduated from the University of Wisconsin, but I had all these student loans, all this debt. And so competing in the Miss Wisconsin program and then going to Miss America wiped out all of my college debt. So the confidence came, but it started from a place of very, very little confidence.
Yet there was something in spite of all of the angst that had to have caused you and the circumstances you just described and you've just glossed over so quickly about your upbringing and your parenting and those kinds of things that I don't know, there's something inside you that just needed to be born to the world, it sounds like. And yeah,
I
that's your
appreciate you saying that.
well, it occurs to me that we all have that. We've all been given something at some point. And in my experience as a coach and a speaker and author, I see far more people who don't either find it or pursue it than who do.
Yeah.
And so if that's true, that we all are given some kind of gift, throughout our lifetime. I work with a guy who says we all get to discover what it is, but for many people, it's on our deathbeds when we go, if only.
Mhm.
And so you're a great example of pursuing despite, when you said the middle finger, I could do the middle finger, or I could let that incident define me for the rest of my life. And something in you said, I'm going forward. Even when I lost, came back 3 years later, that's perseverance. That's persistence. That's, to me, that's confidence. And you said it was developed, but I'm going to tell you, I bet there had to be something inside you that was a
Well,
seed.
I come from a place of faith. So yes, I absolutely believe there are seeds inside of us and that God places different things in us. And I will say to other people going through things, especially young people, teenagers, God's not punishing you. He's preparing you. The foster home you're living in, God's not punishing you. He's preparing you. The bad decisions your family has made, your parent has made, God's not punishing you. He's preparing you because someday you're going to use that experience to help another person. The key is to grab onto that and actually do something with it instead of sitting in that spot of bitterness, instead of sitting in that spot of, well, this defines me now.
Right. Oh, such a great message. So if you look at it like that, I suppose those things had to happen for you as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And things still happen for me. Okay, God, that's enough. No more for me's right now. I just like to take a nap. But
Tell me about the whole kindness background, the kindness movement that you're very committed. Tell me more about that.
well, in 2011, I got a phone call from the publisher of the Forum newspaper, Bill Marciel Jr. Nice guy, wonderful guy. And he said, "Hey, you were on TV and we are looking for female writers." I had just kind of retired from the TV business. I quit to stay home, have another child. And so he said, "We're looking for female writers. And I know you have a news background. Would you write about politics?" And I said, absolutely not. No way, Jose. And so then he said, "Well, would you write about cooking?" And I said, "I have made lasagna twice and both times forgotten to put in the lasagna noodles." Um, yeah. And then, he asked about parenting, and I just felt like none of those things were really my jam. They just weren't my passion. And I thought, well, I could do it, but do I really want to? And so he said, "You call me when you figure out what you want to write about." And so I had an experience that just really touched me, that dealt with kindness. And I went home and I wrote it up and I called the publisher and I said, "Hey, Bill, can I write about kindness? Can I ask people to send in their stories of kindness, like things that they've done and how it made them feel to be kind, or times in which kindness showed up at just the right moment? What if we did that?" And he said, "Let's try it." So they gave me a weekly column. They called it Kindness is Contagious. It up until last month, it ran in newspapers in North Dakota, and then eventually North Dakota and Minnesota. And now it still runs in some of the newspapers in North Dakota, Minnesota, but the Forum has moved, they've transitioned to online. That's where their people are. So it still is published online on Fridays.
Gotcha. And every month, so like every episode, I'm in podcast talk. Every column is new. You write every week. You're like on all the time.
Yeah. So this is the funny thing about writing a weekly column. Like, you have to do it every week.
So I'm like, what? Wow.
Yeah, but that's what transformed my life, because I agreed to start writing this weekly column. Well, it took a long time before people would send in their.
Okay, now I lost all of that. I'm losing all of that. It took a long time before then and everything after that.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. It took a long time before people would start sending in their stories of kindness. It was mainly people just trying to figure out what I was up to. And so I had to investigate and be a reporter of my own life. I had to look for the kindness around me. I had to create kindness around me sometimes by going and doing an act of kindness and then really thinking about how that felt and what that interaction was like. And within a year of that, my life had radically changed, because what I hadn't told you, and maybe you know this or maybe you don't, Jodee, but in
Stop. Now start again in 2000. That's where I lost you.
In 2011, I was on the edge of what anyone would call an alcoholic. I was a drinker and a smoker, an overeater. I was angry at my husband all the time. He just couldn't do enough to help me or to make me happy. And we had 3 small children, and I had a good job, and it was just, it, there was something missing, but I didn't know what that something was. And so I was on antidepressants, and that really didn't do the trick. And so that's where I was when I started writing the kindness column. And when I had to start being intentional about seeing the kindness around me, it transformed my life. Within 1 year, I had totally quit drinking. I had quit smoking. I had lost 30 pounds. I had re-fallen in love with my husband, who is indeed a really great guy. And
Okay, I got to know more about this. Okay. So take me back 2011. And were you faking your life? Because did people know about
Totally.
it? Okay, so there was something going on. You had a mask on, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. 2011, I would say, I thought I was being authentic, but what I was being was what I thought everyone else needed me to be. So at the end of the day, when we take our mask off and you put on your jammies, I poured myself a rum and Coke. And so, very much a closet drinker, very much a closet smoker. People who look at me say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you ever smoked." Um, and I don't even know that Saul knew how bad it felt to be me or to feel like I was bringing such a toxic environment into our home. I don't think he ever really got that because when it was a slow transfer. It felt like a fast transformation to me and probably to him too. But really, what happened was slowly, day by day, I just became a nicer person to live with. And that toxicity kind of left our house. I wasn't always nagging him about things, the socks on the floor and the pizza crumbs on the counter, those sorts of things. I just kind of stopped worrying about. And so the beauty behind that is that even though I didn't know that life could be better, um, God knew it could be a whole lot better than it was for me. And it was just a matter of getting outside of myself and trying to be authentic and really, just live life looking at other people and getting my eyes off myself, because really that's what it was. It was selfishness. It was just me looking at me and saying, "Oh, well, this is wrong in my life, or that could be better in my life, or somebody else's husband treats her like that and mine doesn't, or those kids are so well behaved." And, just anything you want to look at, anything. And so when we act in kindness, we get our eyes off ourselves and put them onto other people.
So can you go back before that? Like how did that happen up to 2011? It doesn't just happen one day you start drinking and smoking, right? I mean, there's a way to get there. What happened before that? What was going on for you?
Um,
Or is that, I'm sorry if that's too personal to ask.
oh, there's nothing too personal. No, no.
I'm fascinated because I'm a life coach and I'm not trained in um, any kind of mental illness. And I hate to use that terminology, but depression falls in that category and I don't understand it personally. And so I'm always fascinated with what causes people to put that much on themselves. You're an amazing person. And what would happen to take you from being Miss Wisconsin, and maybe it was part of that, to uh, not liking yourself at all? You mentioned something in passing about a suicide attempt.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I would say that I struggled with depression from the time I was very little. Probably, I mean, I guess my first recollection of it would be probably about fifth grade, where it just felt so heavy in life, like this cloud. And to me, it's like a cloud. And now I'm old enough and I have enough tools in my tool belt to see the cloud rolling in when it's coming, and to do what I need to do to alert the people around me of what's happening so that we can stave it off. I can move out of it. It doesn't come and I don't feel it for a couple of days. But I remember that from when I was a child. And so maybe it stemmed from the divorce. Maybe it was a chemical imbalance. Who knows, right? I don't, both of my parents and I have a wonderful relationship. I love them. I'm grateful for everything that we've all gone through together, because it did happen for us, right? It did. So that being said, I don't know what caused the depression initially, and I don't know that I ever knew that that's what it was, but it did strike hard in eighth grade, and that was at a point where I wanted to end my life. Now I was also um, a gregarious teenager. So I would go low, but then I would come high again, And so sometimes I could stay in those high areas for a long time. And I don't want to confuse people. I wasn't bipolar. That's not what I'm talking about. But it's just a matter of my lows were a little bit lower than everybody else's, and my highs were maybe a little bit higher than everyone else's. And so becoming Miss Wisconsin, was like riding the high of it. It was, I didn't smoke from that during that, I didn't drink, but I had when I was in college. I drank in college, but to me, I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. It's one of the top 10
Who
party schools.
doesn't drink there, right?
I don't think you could go there and not drink. It's just part of, college initiation.
I went to Concordia. I went to Concordia and we drank at Concordia.
That's a dry campus. What's wrong with you?
I drank on campus. When I went to college, the age was 19. So
right. So anyway, I would say that it was after Miss Wisconsin, probably when life kind of got quiet again. I got a job in a bar, bartending, and started smoking there, started drinking there, and then I kind of always drank, but again, it was culturally normal in a small town, Wisconsin, to drink. It was no big deal. And then I think part of it, then I went on to TV right away, and I worked as a morning show reporter in Milwaukee. And so that was a lot of stress, and it was 4:00 in the morning until 2:00 in the afternoon. And I'd go home, and by, 8:00, I need to be in bed. So then you have a drink so you can unwind, and, I just feel like I put too many of those days together. And somewhere along the way, I lost control. And, I had tried to quit drinking. There were definitely signs along the way. I always quit drinking and quit smoking when I was pregnant. It was very odd how even before I would get that pregnancy test back, I'd start to feel weird and had no taste for cigarettes or alcohol. So that was such a blessing. But then, the baby would get a little bit older. I'd stop breastfeeding or whatever. And then I was like, hey, it's time for me now. And that was a dangerous place for me to be.
So 2011, then coming back, how old were your kids at that point?
Let's see. Jordan was.
Sorry about the math.
I know, right? Jordan was born in 2004. Charlie was born in 2005. So they were, 7 and 6. Is that right? Yeah. 7 and 4 is 11. Yeah. Okay. 7 and 6. And then Ben was about a year and a half old.
And something happened in 11 and it was just time. It was just you were done. Was it the kindness? Was it the column?
So, well, in 2011, that's when I started writing the column. It was actually 2012 that I stopped drinking.
Okay.
And yeah, I guess I had another night where I was out with Saul, and I just publicly embarrassed him. I just lost control of myself and publicly embarrassed myself and him, and kind of blacked out, didn't really remember what happened during that night. And I had quite a few of those evenings where I just couldn't quite remember what happened. And the next day I woke up and Saul came into our bedroom and he just said, "You owe me an apology." And I said, I know I do. And I said, "I'm sorry." And he goes, I just don't understand, why you can't, like, it doesn't even seem like you're drinking that much. Like, what's wrong, And part of that, I think, is the closet drinking factor of it. People don't know how much a person's really drinking. And I remember I crawled back into bed and I was in the fetal position crying. And, I had just gotten to know God a little bit before that, just a little bit, where I felt like maybe he wasn't only involved in the macro things of life, but also in the micro things. Like he might actually care that I'm in this bed crying right now. That was a strange concept to me. And so I remember crying, and I remember just kind of in desperation pleading, like, God, please take this away. Like, take away the hangover, take away the shame that I'm feeling, take away this need to constantly have this stupid, repetitive, foolish behavior. Please, just take it away. And in that moment, I really felt him say to me, Nick, I want to use you, but I have to trust you. And I can't trust you when you're drinking. And in that moment, I was like, whoa, you mean there might actually be something left for me to do in life? I'd already been Miss Wisconsin. I'd already had kids. I'd already gotten married. I'd already been on television. Like, there could be something else. And in that moment, I just said, okay, I'm done. And I quit. I just quit. And I wish that I could say to other people who are struggling with addiction how to find that sort of deliverance from the addiction. And I can't. I don't know why I was able to do it and not go through withdrawals. There are times now that I still think, oh, that glass of wine smells so good, or man, I am stressed out. I would love to have a rum and Coke. But I know it's not an option for me because I know that I am on a mission in this life to do something that's real. It's just real.
So it feels today, 8 years later, is it worth the struggle?
Yeah. Yeah. And I am so grateful that I stopped drinking when I did, because my kids were little. They know now what I struggled with because I'm open about it. And I talk to school groups, I've talked to my children's peers about all of this. And, but they don't remember a home that felt stressed out like that. They don't remember their mom ever being hungover like that. And I'm so grateful for that. And
Because that's when they're 6 and 7. That's when they're pretty malleable at that point. So uh, you remind all of us, I think, that again, we talked about this earlier about how we're all given a gift, we're all given a reason for our lives, a purpose, and no matter what it might look like in the darkest of times, the faith, I think, is like a pilot light that is always lit, just needs to be fanned once in a while if you have that faith. You mentioned that you didn't really have a strong faith until 2012-ish. What was your upbringing? Were you raised in a religious home or?
I was raised Catholic, and I have a great respect for the Catholic Church. I'm not Catholic. I'm Lutheran now, but I just have such a great respect because I loved the ritual of it. I loved the way that people used certain prayers and cadences and things like that to reach God. But for me, I never got past the ritual to get to a relationship. I just stuck with the ritual. And, God was so far away and so untangible to me that I couldn't imagine why would he ever want to bother with me, and so that's when in 2011, that's when a friend kind of introduced me to maybe another way to look at God.
It's funny because on this podcast, and it's relatively new yet, so we haven't really found exactly our niche yet. But being real has a lot to do with having the conversations that might be difficult to have. And we've talked about spirituality, we've talked about politics, we've talked about a lot of things already in this circle where I would love the opportunity to have people be as real as they're being right now. Because what's the alternative if we live our lives plastic and fake? At some point, something will happen, I would bet, that would either wake us up or maybe kill us
Mhm.
without us realizing it and fit.
Well, and what a shame, because for me, my mission, my ministry is kindness. And I feel like the best way that I can be kind to other people is to allow them to know or remind them or tell them that whatever they're going through, they're not alone. Like, they're not, if you're a mom and you're home and you're like, I have to have my bottle of wine every night after the kids go to bed, like, sister, I hear you. I have been there. And, whatever that secret thing is, it could be pornography, can be anything, and we hide those so deep inside ourselves, and we think, well, no one would love me, or no one should know this, like, you know it's too embarrassing. I would never be accepted. And so I'm like, okay, well, you know what, here's all my junk, I'm taking it out of the trunk. I'm not trying to show my junk pile being bigger than anyone else's junk pile. That's not a comparison. I'm just saying, hey, if you want to have a conversation about something, and you're too afraid to talk to anybody else about it, then let me start the conversation at least.
I love that. I love that. So the way you do that is the host of the weekly show, the podcast, the columns, what's your favorite part of what you get to do with people?
My favorite is speaking in real life, in public, to people, to be in front of a group. Unfortunately, that's not happening right now with COVID. So I'm really missing that. And, we do some virtual things. It's not nearly as fun to me as being in the room with people. Maybe that comes back and maybe it doesn't, but I'm doing.
It'll come back. It'll come back. We have to say it'll come back.
Yeah. So.
What audience? Do you like speaking with the kids? Do you like speaking with adults? What's your favorite audience?
Adults, for sure, adults. And if I were going to go tomorrow someplace and say, like, what am I going to do? I would love to be able to go to a women's retreat and speak to women, and really have some great authentic conversations with women and get those things started. I do also a lot of workplace positivity training and things like that. I go into schools, and sometimes I'll, at the beginning of this coming school year, I'll be speaking at a school in South Dakota that's going to go back traditional school. And I'm talking to 400 of their teachers and staff and custodians and things, to just remind them that what they do is important, and kind of set the tone for how to bring kindness into everyday life. With students and difficult people and difficult situations. And then I do speak to teenagers. I don't really like to go below about 7th grade, because some of the things I talk about are very real. And, teenage kids know about cutting and drinking and suicide and all of those things. But younger kids, I just assume, not share that kind of stuff with.
Sure. So if people wanted to get a hold of you, what would be the best way for them to find you?
Oh, send an owl. No, I'm just kidding. I'm reading Harry Potter with my child. So I'm like, just, tape a note to the owl's foot and see what happens.
Somewhere in South Dakota, you can find her.
Yeah, there's only a couple thousand of us around here. My website is NicoleJPhillips.com. Also, braveandkind.net. They both take you to the same place. And, I would love for people they can find me there. They can find me on social media, Nicole J. Phillips.
And it's 2 L's, Phillips.
Yeah.
You will not be sorry that you've listened to this podcast and looked Nicole up. You guys, if you don't know her at all, you need to meet Nicole Phillips and listen to some of her podcasts. You have amazing guests on your podcast. Oh my goodness. Your latest podcast is with Jason Mraz. What?
Yeah, right. The singer. I mean,
how did that happen?
You know what? His publicist reached out to me. I was like, I got the email and I'm like, wait, what? Is this a joke? Like, who's teasing me right now? And because I love Jason Mraz. I love his music. It's all very kind. And so that was like, wait, what? But yeah, we've had Leon Logothetis. He was the guy who had the Kindness Diaries. He ran around in a yellow motorcycle on Netflix. He's a great guy.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that guy.
Yeah. And the 100th episode is my favorite. That's with a man named Don Carter, who he basically he rallied a bunch of people so that they could send the nurse, they could send the woman who worked at their local Popeyes fast food restaurant, so they could send her to nursing school. And yeah, and so Don Carter is just an amazing man, and it's his words are especially interesting and poignant in this time of life that we're in. He's a Black man. His wife committed suicide, and he's raising, he's raising his daughter. He's raising his kids, and yeah. So it's so that's the 100th episode. But anyway,
So listen in because it's just fun. I mean, if you've gotten a feel for Nicole here, you'll love it when she's the interviewer because it's really fun to hear what you what you talk about and what is important. And I'm really happy that you're back in the Dakotas because Aberdeen's not that far from Fargo. I bet you're kind of happy to be back, sort of closer to home, aren't you?
oh, totally. Yeah, my very best friend lives in Fargo, and to be able to be back and see her. She's one of those people, you talk about people you can be real with. Like, she knew me when I was a drinker. She knew all of it. So, and she's loved me through it. So, yeah, good
Well,
stuff.
welcome back to the Dakotas, and thank you so much for being real with me today. This has been such a joy, and I look forward to continuing to follow you. And I hope when we can get back in person that we might be able to have a glass of not wine, but we'll have something. We'll have coffee in my look at this in my NDSU.
Oh, you got your bison mug. Okay. Love it.
Get the
That's good.
wolves, get some wolves stuff because you are my college colors are your colors at Northern State now, Marine
Yeah.
Corps and gold. So.
Yep. Yep.
Oh,
I'll have to hook you up with a northern mug.
that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you, Jody. This was great fun.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna